taking a kick down the outside, wins the Everest.
Hello, I'm Caroline Searcy. Welcome to the return of Thoroughbreds Are Go for 2023, a thoroughbred rehoming and aftercare program helping racing owners find homes for their horses and advice for those who take them on. Coming up, we review the International Federation for the Aftercare of Racehorses Global Conference held in Melbourne earlier this year. And we catch up with one of the star speakers, Australian Olympian Amanda Ross, with great advice for trainers wanting to move an ex-racehorse into the equestrian world, plus her newest thoroughbred, who I happen to know from a past life. And the love of stable staff for the racehorses in their care lasts a lifetime. We have another great tale in Arrowfield Studs Strapper Stories. That's all coming up on Thoroughbreds Are Go. Earlier this year, the IFAR, or International Federation for the Aftercare of Racehorses Global Conference, was held in Melbourne leading into the Asian Racing Conference. It was a great opportunity to hear world's best practice from a number of racing jurisdictions right around the globe and to hear the latest in the aftercare of our thoroughbreds.
There is something special when we bring horses and humans together.
So we get to really know what their goals are as a rider and what this horse actually wants to do. And then we kind of go on that journey on rehoming and helping with that transition and making sure that the transition is smooth. And if they need any assistance, they can certainly reach back out.
This program supports the welfare of off-the-track horses and their longevity in their new post-racing homes.
It's been a fabulous IFAR conference here in Melbourne, and fantastic to see such great representation from right around the world.
I mean, fantastic. I had no idea we'd get this kind of engagement, and it's come so far since we all met 3 years ago. So many more countries engaged, and really engaged, and everybody, even if they're not doing anything, they're really now thinking about they must start doing something in their racing jurisdiction.
With my experience competing at Tokyo Olympics is to compete at world-class eventing competition with retired racehorses.
Of course, the conference was sponsored by the JRA, and there's so much interesting work that's happening in Japan now. They've really come along in leaps and bounds.
Yes, of course, because when we first went there, that actually they weren't thinking about it, and now they are definitely doing as much as they possibly can, and they've got to work with the riding clubs out there, and obviously the Old Horses program as well. So they're working very hard and sort of work with therapy as well. So they're starting to do some work, and I know they want to do a lot more.
It's under the obligations that owners must find suitable homes once their horse retires from racing. And the vast majority of people in New South Wales are finding those homes. And for us, at Team Thoroughbred, we're assisting those horses who are stuck. There are horses that aren't transitioning super quickly into equestrian sport or pleasure homes, and so we're able to take them in and assess them across the properties. The properties allow us to give the horses enough time to be a horse, take the time they need.
We have over 50 acknowledged retrainers all across the state. Collectively, they retrain over 600 retired Victorian racehorses each year into all different types of disciplines. So everything from dressage to showing to show jumping. We saw this morning at Spring Creek Equine. It was a wonderful example of some of our leading acknowledged retrainers.
We really need to look for a category where the thoroughbred can showcase its specialness and not be wiped out by the warm bloods.
Been recognised from that real outset of racing in the UAE. I think over 500 horses have been rehomed throughout that time. There are thoroughbreds competing in the UE polo team. There are horses competing, there are horses working as lead ponies on race day. So it's really nice to see them all around the place and really having successful second careers.
In 2019, the Queensland Government commissioned an independent inquiry into the management of retired racehorses in Queensland called the Martin Inquiry. The Queensland Government supported all 55 recommendations made by the inquiry, which has resulted in a chain of initiatives that have had positive outcomes for equine welfare.
We heard from an Australian point of view, of course, as host of this conference, from Mel from Racing Victoria, Latoya from Racing New South Wales, but Kim Duffy was exceptional. Obviously, they don't get the funding as a smaller population of those bigger eastern states, but the programs in place in Queensland are just outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it's quite a lot is what we do at home, and it's very much about activities, giving these horses a life after racing and backing it up with education, not just for the people with the horses, but also for the industry itself, engaging them as well. And then backing this up with a vulnerable horse program, because there are a few that might slip through the net, and it's very important there's something in place to help those horses.
I think there's two things we're looking at. One is to incentivise people to want to buy a thoroughbred, and the second one is to educate people on, from my point of view, I know about equestrian, but if I don't work in the racing industry, I might get my thoroughbred, bring him home, put him in a 10-acre paddock, put a bridle on with a noseband, and then expect him to stand by the mounting block. And if you've been in the racing industry, you know that's not going to go well.
And a lot of what everyone's talking about is about forging those links with the equestrian world and having prize money at shows and all those sorts of things, and really, you know, promoting the thoroughbred. And I guess it was so fascinating hearing Amanda Ross, who's an Australian, elite eventer, talking about her Frankel gelding and what she wants from trainers and people trying to sell a horse to her when she goes to look at the horse. I mean, this is the sort of the grassroots of it, isn't it?
Yes, it is very difficult, and you would understand as a racing person that the trainers are busy. They've got a lot going on, and somebody trying a racehorse that they might want to take as an equestrian is probably not at the top of their list of things to do, and of course they probably haven't got the facilities either. But I think a lot of people are working hard at that, and I know at home a lot of equestrians actually are working with trainers and schooling horses to help them during their racing careers. So therefore they're getting an eye of what's going on there anyway. So if some of those start leaving the system, they'll be picking them up. So it is getting better, and certainly at home, and I'm sure as things progress there will be a much more tie-up with the equestrian and the racing communities.
So many of the sport horse people now becoming pre-trainers themselves, and I think that that's working in a really positive way, even outside the box, making rehoming horses easier because they're having some of those fundamental basics instilled in them at the pre-trainers.
There can be little doubt that after listening to our speakers this afternoon, that racing does indeed take its responsibility in relation to aftercare very seriously.
We're just absolutely blown away by the response. We've had a tremendous rollout. We've had people register from 28 different countries, and we've really had an ambitious agenda today. We've never before done a field trip, and taking the delegates out to Spring Creek Equine was something that was very, very special, and I think it's actually what brings it all home, seeing the horses.
Well, we saw that, back in 2015 in Kentucky, going to the Thoroughbred Equine Makeover and some of the great retraining centres in America. And it's come a long way, I guess, not only in Australia but around the world, with so many more of these programs and events that are taking place to show people the great athleticism of the thoroughbred off the track.
Well, I think what is really pleasing to see is not only hearing that jurisdictions have programs in place, but to hear how sophisticated they actually are. A lot of thought and strategy has gone into them, and they're thinking about the whole range of issues to address the whole range of challenges that there are in relation to aftercare.
One thing that we find is that in many cases horses off the track are not that good at turning. In other words, turning means the forelegs go laterally so that he changes direction, because the horse can also change direction by turning his hind legs. But in terms of the forelegs, the horse will typically fall in one direction on one shoulder or the other, and in equestrian terms we call that crookedness, that it makes him really crooked and bent, and that predisposes him to go one way or the other. And they do it in racing too, which is why lugging bits are used primarily, and lugging bits as a way of keeping the horse straight. But the problem with the lugging bit is that it may have a slightly decelerating effect. So it's much better if we can train the horse to turn.
And of course, Andrew McLean, I mean, he was quite fascinating, wasn't he? Talking about, you know, horses not only needing to see each other through the bars of a stable, but how important touch is for them in terms of their socialisation and their sort of, you know, lessening their anxiety levels, which obviously helps temperament-wise, not only when they're in a racing stable, but after.
Yes, and of course we had the same from Sung Ho with his temperament study as well. And it's all really interesting. And I think the more science we have around this, the better. It can only be helpful.
You need to win the hearts and minds of the public, and that's the way to do it. And it's through clever communications programs, both by the young, who I think are the heart and soul of social media, so they know how to get that story out there, and just by having PRAs all around the world being very, very active on getting that story out there, getting a nice little story that will get everyone's attention.
And Tim Gilbert talking about, you know, the need for us to really address the elephant in the room, you know, the anti-racing brigade, and how, you know, racing needs to really tell these good stories. And as we saw in the IFAR video, there are so many good stories right around the world about successful thoroughbred rehoming.
Yeah, we have to do that, Caroline. It's really, really important, but it's not easy. You know, a lot of racing publications and media aren't really very interested in this unless it's not a particularly good story. And there's so many good stories out there, and we really need to share those, because the general public they need to understand that there is a life after racing, because they think at the moment that they don't know what happens. We've got to tell them that there's a life.
Look, our work is never done, and we want to see better regulation, better science and better awareness of our responsibilities to the horses. So today was a tremendous success and we're very pleased, but we're certainly not going to be resting on our laurels, and there'll be more work to do in the weeks and months to come.
A really important conference, and IFAR recently kicked another goal with the Paris Olympics in 2024 going to recognise the thoroughbred as a registered breed. Coming up after the break on Thoroughbreds Are Go, Sydney Olympian Amanda Ross, and some great advice for people trying to move thoroughbreds into the equestrian world. Sydney 2000 Olympian Amanda Ross is one of Australia's elite three-day eventers with a passion for riding thoroughbreds. She recently acquired Switching to Win, or now as he's known, Romeo by Frankel, and she has some great tips for anyone trying to rehome their thoroughbred and get a great home in the equestrian world. It's so great to see Switching to Win, who was Frankel from Give Me Five. I remember him from when he was a yearling, and then all the way through racing with Peter Snowden. Then he's come down here in Victoria and had a racing career. But it is so important when you see these horses transfer from racing into a fantastic equestrian home.
Look, it is. I thought it was hilarious that you walked in and recognised him straight away. And since having this horse, you know, I keep finding out all these little things about his career up to date. And he has turned out to be one of the best horses I've ever had, and that is including all the warm bloods and all the thoroughbreds. He's a really special character. He's very talented. He's brave. He's a beautiful type. I could kiss his pink nose every day. You know, yeah, I'm absolutely rapt with how he's transferred from a off the tracker to equestrian career.
You are obviously one of Australia's elite three-day eventers. You competed with a thoroughbred in the Sydney Olympics, shortlisted for Tokyo. Tell us a bit about your background, and you've obviously ridden some very, very talented thoroughbreds.
Yeah, well, you know, as a kid growing up in Australia, once I migrated from ponies, the next step was an off-the-track thoroughbred, and I feel so familiar with the off-the-track thoroughbreds because it's really what I grew up riding. And the Australian Thoroughbred is an incredible horse. It's so suited to three-day eventing, and we've won Olympic gold medals on our Aussie Thoroughbred, so that's all we ever looked for. And then the funny thing is to go to the Sydney 2000 Olympics on a Thoroughbred, and then between now and then I've had many horses, both Thoroughbreds and other breeds, but then to be shortlisted for Tokyo on, again, another Thoroughbred, it just shows you how good they are at that particular discipline.
By seeing so many more Thoroughbreds being taken off the track and going to a lot of the competitions that are now sponsored by the racing and breeding industry, it does make it a bit easier, I guess, for elite equestrians to be able to see them and find the next great competition horses.
Yeah, it does. I used to go to the track and source them, so I'd stand in the mounting yard and watch them, and I had contacts within the racing industry. But sometimes it's really difficult to see the potential in the horses when they're like either fresh in the middle of a racing prep or they haven't had any schooling. So being able to go to these off-the-track competitions means that we're giving the horses that really good base of training that enables them to then go to their next career. And this guy's done a couple of the off-the-track dressage days, and although now I've turned into straight show jumping, I still felt that it was really important for him to have that basis of education. And the off-the-track classes mean you're only competing against thoroughbreds, and he's competing against his own type, and that way I don't feel that because he's not a warm blood, he's being marked down when he really was behaving beautifully.
What do you think the racing people trying to move that horse on need to know to help you to want to take on that horse?
That's such a good question, and I recently had this experience where I went to go and have a look at two horses, and the first one had raced on the Wednesday and I went on the Sunday, and he had been in a yard since then and he wasn't worked, and he was completely off his trolley. Now, I felt really sorry for that horse because I didn't get to see him at his best, and I wasn't in a position to put myself on that particular horse because there also wasn't a safe, flat place to ride. And I asked the trainer, and they're great trainers, lovely people, said, do you have a flat sort of arena facility? And they said, well, no. The second horse came out, and much more to my liking, quiet temperament. I was happy to hop on this one, but I had to ride it on the side of a hill. And I was in a track pad, which, mind you, was pretty comfy, but I don't know whether every person going to try that horse is going to feel confident in a track pad on the side of a hill. So I would love to see all the racing facilities with a really big flat arena, and to encourage every trainer and every racehorse to have some flat work training. So I can go to that facility, I can try it on the arena, it's fenced off, it's safe for both the rider and the horse, and if there's some poles or some jumping facilities, at least then I feel like I can give that horse the best assessment that it deserves.
I think it was a privilege to be talking at the International Forum for the Aftercare of Racehorses conference just recently. It's really important for trainers and owners and anyone, or spelling farms, to present that horse. If you're going to ride a horse you might want to take on, tell us what you've found about how they can help you.
The basic dressage training, they don't have to be a high level, but we need to be able to see them walk, trot and canter. I need to be able to see what their temperament's like, how supple and flexible they are, and ideally, for me, I need to be able to see if they can jump, and even just to have, 2 or 3 little show jumps or, some logs or something that's really safe and small. If they've done a little bit of pole work and they've done a little bit of flat work, then when you hop on and you've got a nice safe flat area, it means that you're not sort of on the side of a hill, somewhere the horse hasn't been before, trying to do something in an unfamiliar situation. And it's just, I think it gives the horse a better opportunity to show itself in its best light.
Trainers, owners really have a responsibility, I guess, to try their best to match up the right horse with the right equestrian rider.
They start as racehorses and they're purpose-bred as racehorses, but then if they finish racing at 5, they can be in the equestrian field for the next minimum of 10 years. And I think it's really great for all horses, and I know a lot of fantastic trainers are already implementing flat work and pole sessions into their horses' work, and I know that those horses find it much easier to transition over.
And some of that work, as you said, with the pre-trainers or even breaking in or when they come back from spells is really important. I mean, this is the thing you've got to remember too about, retiring the horse sound enough that potentially it can go on and be a competition horse.
Definitely, definitely. Romeo's a really good example of a horse who retired very sound. We had him completely vetted from, you know, head to toe, and the trainer that I got him from, Amy Johnson, she knew what I was after. So that was really important, that I got him from a trainer who recognised what was required for my discipline. She knew he had to be super sound. She knew that he was very, very suitable, and she was very honest with what he was. So I knew that when I got this horse, I was being told absolutely everything. There were no surprises, and he's actually better than I thought he was.
I sell him out. I sell him for 475,000. Well bought, 475. Thank you, underbidders. Duncan Ramage, the buyer, 475. Thank you.
Switching the win now goes to it.
He was a high-priced yearling, and he was bought by a good judge. You know, the movement is there, and that really translates, I think, from being just a natural athlete, right from when they're born through yearling sales and onwards. A natural athlete will transfer from one elite sport to another.
I really think that, and I had an opportunity to go to the Magic Millions for the first time this year. It's true, the horses that are those beautiful types, they are the expensive ones, and they're going to want to race them, and they're the ones I would also like to have a go, you know, taking into the equestrian field. So, you know, if they're not going to be great racehorses, but they retire sound, they definitely have so much of a purpose-bred home afterwards. The middle part, and that's for moving the back part, and go is just go, and then stop is, if I stop my pelvis from moving, he feels that. I teach him to respond to that.
So explain a little bit about what you're doing with him in the arena there, because obviously, you know, backing up, he knows exactly what you want, and the way, you know, if you move your heel up higher, he moves his hindquarters. You're actually teaching so much new information to this horse.
So yeah, every horse I start, I've developed a program from all the years of coaching and training horses, and that is to be able to tell the horse exactly what I want, so that he understands, and then it's easier and more pleasant for him. So what I aim to do is to teach him how to be supple left and right, to move off my leg when my leg is more forward on the girth, and he moves that part of him so his shoulders move over. And then if I put my leg further back, that means his hindquarters move over. So I'm developing him to have like a Foxtel remote control of all these buttons down his side. So he starts with maybe 1 or 2 buttons, and the aim is to get him to respond to lots of commands really easily.
And how easy is it? I guess that's a great analogy, but to teach them, you know, the half passes or flying changes. Are thoroughbreds sort of pretty similar to other breeds, or do they take it on more quickly, or can they be more stubborn, or are they all individuals?
So they are very self-propelled, which I like. Initially, they're very sensitive, so sometimes they tell you that, get your leg off, oh my God, what are you doing? But then once they understand, they're very trainable and they remember it, and because they're self-propelled, they go forward very easily. Some of the warm bloods are a little more stubborn, whereas these guys, once they get it, they get it. So I really enjoy being involved, and I think for me it's about people that love the horse. If they want to keep following that horse, it's really enjoyable, because like I love this guy, so anyone that's had any contact with him is more than welcome, you know, to come and join the little bandwagon. You know, like if they have normal expenses, entries, and you know, their vet stuff, which is your standard stuff, but I think just to at least make sure that they are sound and they have all of their management looked after. If they need their feet done a specific way, if they need any particular veterinary treatment to get them right for their next career, I think that's probably the best start that we can have. And then some really good training and feeding.
Yes, it all adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and you can see how much you love him, and he's obviously a very happy horse.
Yeah.
But what's next? I mean, he's 7 now, so what are the plans now for this gorgeous son of Frankel, who, you know, you're an elite Olympic equestrian. What are the plans for him? Is he up to that grade?
Well, you know, I got him 12 months ago now, and he had done a little bit of hurdling, so he was quite an honest jumper, but he's gone from never having done a show jumping round to now he did his first meet of 15 on the weekend. You don't usually get thoroughbreds that go to World Cup jumping. However, this guy's got a very special jumping technique, more like a warm blood than a thoroughbred. So my ultimate dream would be to mix my love of thoroughbreds with my love of World Cup show jumping and get him to that level. So I'm not going to say no, because at the moment he's given me no indication to say that he can't. But we'll see.
And I dare say you're going to wind up with a few people following him. Whatever way he goes, you'll have people that are going to be keeping tabs on your lovely Romeo and yourself, and where you go going forwards.
Well, I hope that it helps to promote thoroughbreds and show that they are wonderful, you know, partners, and they can do high-level stuff as well as really low-level stuff. So yeah, hopefully you can be the pin-up boy for the thoroughbreds.
What an inspiring individual, Amanda Ross, and just highlights the need for racing owners and stables to show off their thoroughbreds in the best light if they're looking to get them a new home. Coming up after the break on Thoroughbreds Are Go, Arrowfield Stud Strapper Stories, featuring Anne-Marie Mulligan of John Thompson Stables at Randwick.
So the horse that I really loved, his name was Jumbo Go. I fell in love with him at first at Rose Hill when I worked for John and Gary Moore, and then actually I went up to work with John in Queensland, and he came with us, so I really got to see him progress through his 2-year-old stage and into his 3-year-old.
Jumbo Goal coming through in the centre. Jumbo Goal soon afterwards goes to the lead, and Jumbo Goal gets the money.
I was lucky enough to be with him when he won a couple of races in Brisbane before his owners took him to Hong Kong to compete. I'd always told John Moore that I wanted him one day when he retired, so I made sure to keep a close eye on him and pestered John to no end. Unfortunately, in Hong Kong, he ended up doing both his front tendons and was retired, but I was straight on to John, who asked the owners what the plan was for him on my behalf. His owners were extremely kind and never hesitated in sending him straight home to me. At the moment, he's just relaxing in a paddock until we get the all clear from the vets to put him back into some light work. I've always loved jumping, so eventually I would love to progress onto that with him. We'll just see what he's up for, and I'd be happy to just have him for hacking around the farm. Sometimes people don't realise that they all have different personalities, the exact same as we do, and horses can click with certain people. Even as a colt, he was always very sweet and gentle with me, which I fell in love with. It really makes the 3 a.m. starts a lot easier when you know you're going in to see your best friend every day.
That's all for this week on Thoroughbreds Are Go. Don't miss next week's show as we feature thoroughbreds performing in elite competition, showing just what they can achieve at the thrilling Adelaide Equestrian Festival with 3-day eventers Shanae Lowings and Sam Woods. That and much more next week on Thoroughbreds Are Go. I'm Caroline Searcy. I look forward to seeing you then.